Hey everybody, Alex Cohen here.
And I'm Sara Sadhwani.
And welcome to the latest edition of the Inside the Issues podcast. Yes, there is now a fourth indictment against Donald Trump. And even though all of this is playing out in Georgia, there was a California connection. We'll talk about that.
There sure was. And of course, we're going to go back to talk about an issue we've talked about before.
Yes, back to the Bulgari.
Back to the Bulgari Hotel.
Sounds like a Barry Manilow song, doesn't it?
Yeah, right.
Back to the Bulgari. Yes, some interesting developments there. And a lot of crime and punishment issues to talk about. A recent spate of smash and grabs. You've probably seen the harrowing videos out there. We're going to dive into the politics of all of that. But let's start off talking about Donald Trump. Earlier this week, the fourth indictment comes down. And I don't know about you, Sarah, but it just felt like the longest wait to see, okay, who all was going to be named in it, and what specifically. We'd heard this talk of RICO, and, RICO, of course, getting the whole posse of folks, everybody who's involved.
Organized crime, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
People think about organized crime, and in this case, it's Trump's mafia, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the members of that mafia, so to speak, that group, that clique, is a name known to many of us here in Southern California. I don't think we've talked about him on the pod yet.
I don't think so.
John Eastman.
Mm-hmm. Former dean and law professor at Chapman University down in Orange County, and a major figure kind of as a conservative lawyer, a part of the Federalist Society, had clerked for Clarence Thomas once upon a time, and is known as Dr. Eastman because he also has a PhD from Claremont Graduate University. So definitely a local to SoCal politics, but also a crony of Donald Trump.
Yes.
And so, we see this indictment come out for not only Trump, but also 18 of his associates, again, as you mentioned, under this RICO this law in Georgia. And I think that's a key component here. It's a Georgia-based law, not the federal RICO racketeering law, which could potentially carry with it a minimum 5-year jail sentence. But I think that
it couldn't be overturned as it could in federal cases if Donald Trump were to be elected, which I think is a key thing here, especially when it comes to John Eastman. He was the one, if you remember, on the big rally before the January 6th. There was the hat, the Indiana Jones kind of hat, right? And basically, John Eastman, what's weird to me, Sarah, I just got to say, is that I have interviewed John Eastman probably dozens of times over the years. Oh, yeah. Well, because he just, before Donald Trump was president, he was just one of those guys. He's really smart. He knows a lot about the law, and he's a well-spoken conservative voice in Orange County, right? Like, representative of a lot of people's viewpoints, I would think. So I just think about, I should go back and Google, some of the things that I can't, none of them are coming to mind. But you used to go, if there were a big, legal issue and you needed a local voice, you'd call John Eastman, he'd give you a great interview, and then it was so fascinating to watch him fall into this circle with Donald Trump, outline these theories that Trump and his camp really liked about here are some of the ways that this election was taken from you. He, rallies the troops there on January 6th, and then he gets in big trouble. Chapman University, after what happened on January 6th, said, bye-bye, Felicia, John Eastman, you're out of here. And now the California State Bar has been trying to disbar him, saying, this is not how lawyers behave, right? You gots to go, or at least not be able to practice law here in California anymore. And then he gets named in this indictment. And you mentioned the pressure of jail. This is where it is kind of like a mafia movie. Who is going to cave because they don't want to spend time behind bars? Right,
exactly. Because even if Trump were to win the election in 2024 and go back to the White House, these 18 guys who have been named along with Trump could certainly be serving jail time, and Trump is not able to overturn those sentences because this would be a state crime. So this is a fascinating case, and I thought it was interesting also as well. So the California Bar Association has moved to disbar John Eastman. That is a case that's ongoing for them. Eastman went and said, hey, we need to drop this case back before this indictment came out, kind of recognizing, I'm probably going to get named here at some point in time. The bar coming out this week week saying, no, we're going to continue on. The hearing for that has already started back in June, and will continue to proceed later this month.
Yeah, when lawyers need to get lawyers, it's seldom a good moment for those lawyers, which I think brings us to our weekly thing that we do. It's called What's the Word? The word this week is tough. I think John Eastman is in a tough position right now. Do you double down and say, I stand by every single legal idea I floated, and here's why? And I kind of get the sense that like an academic, big brainy guy like Eastman is going to say, like, let me show you all my legal knowledge and skills, right? Or do you say, how can I help? I don't want to be in jail any longer than I have to. What can I do? That is a very tough call to make.
No, for sure. He's definitely in a tough bind. 9 counts against Eastman in particular. And really a lot of this has to do with constructing a plot to send fake electors to Congress. This is kind of the crux of what they're saying that John Eastman has done. And you're absolutely right. His lawyers have already said, hey, this is not criminal activity. This was political activity. Yeah. So we can already get a taste of the kind of lawyerly speak, I think, that he's going to be trying to make to clear his name. But I think a really big question is he going to work to clear his name and stick by Trump, or will he really try to distance himself at this point in time and save whatever shred of dignity he might still have in his
man,
hat.
we'll see. They've set a date for this trial, March 4th. It's 2024 is going to be the most fascinating legal year. I feel like
right around the primaries.
They just don't even. All right. So let's just like palate cleanse for a moment and talk about what is happening locally here in the city of Los Angeles, because a really surprising development to a topic that we've talked about before, this proposed Bulgari hotel. If you missed that episode, go back and listen to it. Pretty good stuff, if I may say so myself.
May 17th.
Sarah, look at you. Well done. And yes, this was the same Bulgari that, like, you see if you're looking through your Vanity Fair and you see the glossy ads for purses and watches. Same Bulgari brand. They've got hotels all over the world. They want to build one here in LA. I mean, it looks super beautiful, but it is on this hillside on the west side, and a lot of folks are gravely concerned about the impact it could have on the environment, wildfire risks. Katie Yaroslavsky, who is now representing that district, has fought really hard to stop the project. And this week, she had some success. It's not over yet, but you want to explain what the big move is here?
Yeah, so back in May, when we first talked about this, she brought a motion trying to halt this project from going forward. This was a campaign promise she had made on the campaign trail. Interestingly, it seems like Karen Bass, also on the campaign trail, said she was against the project moving forward. And so she had this motion to attempt to tell the planning folks to rescind the plan and not move it forward, but really they doesn't seem to have strong teeth at this point in time. But back in May, she advanced this motion, did not move forward. It was a very close vote. And at that time, we said, look, she's a new politician. Before you bring something to the floor like this, you got to do a vote count and make sure you actually have enough supporters.
Because there was a lot of folks in the union world who wanted the jobs to build this hotel, and they were pushing back.
Exactly. And that's a key component to me in all of this, is that this has the support of hotel workers. And we've talked a lot about hotel workers recently because they're on strike. And yet this is a project that they say, hey, no, these are great jobs. We've already worked with the developer. This is going to be a union property. We support it moving forward. And that it goes along with a whole lot of star power. There has been support in the past from folks like Mark Wahlberg, Ashton Kutcher, Orlando Bloom. And at the same time, folks, celebrities who live in this Benedict Canyon area who have said, no way, like this is a fire hazard. We want to preserve this beautiful environmental landscape. So you see this juxtaposition really between labor and environment in this case.
Yeah, and got celebrities, all the elements of a really juicy SoCal situation. What I found really interesting is that one of the votes that wound up falling in line with Katie Yaroslavsky in opposition to this development came from council member Tracy Park, who definitely is not seen as part of the big progressive environmental caucus that has moved on to to the council, but she said she talked to residents in the area. And this is the one, when I saw it cross the wire, that the Bulgari Hotel had been like voted down, at least at this part, at this stage of it, my first thought was Lahaina, the wildfires in Maui. Right. And like just seeing the devastation there and hearing so many people express concerns about what if there's a wildfire? Are people going to get trapped? And I just couldn't help but wonder if that added some additional like grist to the mill. And sure enough, Tracy Park told the LA Times, like, yeah, I'm thinking about those wildfires in Maui. And that can make a real difference in a decision like this. I find it fascinating.
Totally fascinating. And I think there's always this like political moment where you can kind of step into. And I think we see the wildfires and the devastation in Maui. So it does create this moment where you can kind of eke in and move that forward. I think there's probably some other dynamics here, though, as well. Tracy Park just won her campaign, so isn't going to be looking for maybe some union support right away for another campaign, or maybe even support from the developer, Gary Safady. Thank you very much.
I think we've got that right. Who we should noted weighed in. We heard from his team after the time that we talked about it back in May. And if the Safady team is listening, like we would love to hear what you think of this vote, because I'm sure that's very tough to go back to our word on the week on you. Right. You've been working on this for so many years. You got the initial approvals, and I've seen this happen with the city before. People are like, well, wait a minute, you approved my plans, and now you're not approving my plans, and like we got a lot invested in this. Right. Like, where does this leave us? Go? I'm sure this battle's not over.
And at the end of the day, he still owns that property, right? Yes. So that land he already owns. So if he doesn't build this hotel with union jobs on it and the environmental plan that he says that they will have, what will he build? And he has talked about building numerous mansions on the property and selling them off lot by lot. Is that on balance better, worse? Yeah. Is the city going to stop that in some way, shape, or form? It's just unclear to me because he already owns this land. Yeah. So what then happens to it? Right? Yeah. It's not the city's land.
No, it's not. And speaking of, I'm going to segue here because just another quick update that I want to throw in the mix because it shows, again, development deals and how things can get so tricky. I just want to update, too, the fact that in Anaheim, because we talked about this the last time you and I were together, the mayor there, Harry Sidhu, who had gotten into some trouble, wound up leaving in his spot as mayor and is now like actually in legal trouble. That's right. Which I think is fascinating as well. Yes. There's so many politicians right now facing these tough legal consequences. And what does that mean for cities, states, countries when your leaders or former leaders are on trial?
Right, for ethical violations. And we seem to see this again and again, particularly here in Los Angeles, around land use issues, around these kind of contracting components. It's just an unfortunate, terrible state of affairs, and really an important reason why we need to boost our ethics reforms, I think, at this point in time.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So maybe we should pivot and turn a little bit to future elections. Sarah, like 2024, I feel like is here already. And I think it's becoming at least clear to me, like if I'm going to put my money on what I think will be like the most hot button topics for just about every race, I'm going to say parental rights and gender, which we've talked about a bit before. I'm sure we'll be talking about it again. And crime and punishment. Yeah. And it's just that one that it's always kind of burbling. And overall crime rates in LA are down. And yet there have been all these smash and grabs that then get recorded and they go viral.
Right.
And I don't know. I've seen a number of these videos now, and I don't know about you, Sarah. Like, it is really scary. Yeah. There's no way to watch it, I feel like, and not be scared. Or to picture yourself at the Americana in Glendale. Not that I shop at Yves Saint Laurent. I can't really afford that line of merchandise. But to thinking of being, or there was a Nike in East LA.
I was in Nordstrom recently.
In Canoga Park, right? And I think it's the notion of, like, you're with your family, you go out shopping on the weekend, and all of a sudden 20 or 30 people all come in and just start literally grabbing things and running out the door is scary, scary stuff.
It sure is. And I think you're absolutely right. This has been on the minds of voters here in Los Angeles and California more broadly, and I don't think it's going anywhere. I think you're absolutely right about that. And then the real question is, what do we do about it, right? Because we've come out of this time period, especially coming out of COVID, coming out of the March for Black Lives and the George Floyd movement, where we've really said, hey, look, we need to reassess our approach to crime and punishment, and really be thinking about ways towards rehabilitation, looking at the incomplete structural.
Don't be so tough on crime.
Yeah, well, don't be so tough on crime, and recognize that there's a whole history of for each individual who is a part of a crime as to why they get to where they are to actually be involved in such a crime, right? Like, it is a lifetime of potentially poverty as a child, or in and out of foster care, or there's a whole host of reasons, right?
Yeah.
That might be bringing people to this place in time. So how do we have a more restorative justice system rather than just punish?
Yeah.
But at the same time, when you see these videos, you have to start to ask questions about, like, well, what happens to these folks?
And business owners are frankly pretty pissed off, rightfully so, right? They're worried. They're like, we've had a hard enough time coming out of COVID and staying, and everybody's buying stuff online. Like, it's hard enough as is. Rents are super high, right? Like, on top of all of that, I got to worry if someone's going to come in and steal half my inventory. That is
in the middle of the day,
in the middle of the day, tough for them too. So we saw what happened earlier this week. George Gascon, the LA County District Attorney, held a press conference. I believe it was to discuss homicides. And instead, of course, everybody was like, we're talking about smash and grab. Like, you might want to talk about homicides. This is what we're talking about. And George Gascon talked about the fact that, like, he and his family go and shop at the Canoga Park Mall, and how outraged he was, and how he was going to hold folks accountable. What I thought was really interesting, a couple of things, is he said, it's not just about being tough on the folks who carry out these smash and grabs. He was like, what about the people who buy it? And there is something, you go to the flea markets, or you look online, or wherever might go, right? You are also a part of that crime if you buy this merchandise, right? If you just go on, I don't know, Poshmark or to the flea market, and there's some like brand spanking new Yves Saint Laurent bag there, like, that's probably right from that store in the Americana. So he talked about getting tough on them too. Kind of got into it with reporters a little bit because, of course, so many folks who are critics of George Gascon look at the changes that he made in sentencing and look at his kind of more progressive approach to criminal justice and don't think he has been tough enough. And that's something that I had the opportunity to speak with former LA County District Attorney Steve Cooley, who was DA from 2000 to 2012, very involved in the unsuccessful recall Gascon movement. And I asked him at the beginning of our conversation, okay, why do you think people are out there doing this stuff? And, he kind of talked about, well, because there's no punishment for them. Like, okay, but the why, right? Like to what you're talking about. If you can't afford the rent, if you can't get a job, if you are really worried about how you're putting food on the table, would you think to do something like this? And I thought about, I asked him, is there anything else besides the punishment part that we need to be thinking about here? Here's what Steve Cooley had to say.
Now, I don't think those individuals need to steal diamonds and jewelry and Louis Vuitton bags and all sorts of other high-end items, electronics, to support themselves in these dire times. There are plenty of welfare programs and other things to assist them. And quite frankly, getting a job in this job market is not that hard. There are a lot of jobs that go wanting or lack of people willing to fill those positions. How about don't commit crime? How about obey the law? How about have some moral compass that tells you don't go in, scare the bejesus out of citizens who are just shopping at a store, and then create this chaos, which then is videotaped and frightens thousands upon thousands more.
Now, interesting to note, I've heard rumors, can't confirm, this is Fox who've been reporting this, that George Gascon did meet with someone, Rick Caruso, owner of the Americana, former mayoral candidate, and it's been so fascinating. He put a statement basically saying, like, we got to shut this stuff down, we got to get tough on it. And I have to say, it sounded to me like a campaign statement, but then
campaign for what?
I don't know, Sarah. What do you think? Let's just have a wild speculation.
Wild speculation. I mean, what is he going to run for mayor again? Maybe he runs for district attorney. I don't know. I think he's got a law degree.
Yeah,
lieutenant governor? I can't imagine him as a lieutenant governor.
Yeah, no, I feel like he wants to be here and in LA for sure. The DA race. Can you imagine a race like people have talked about Alex Villanueva, who I don't believe has a law degree, but can you imagine a world where it was like Alex Villanueva versus George Gascon versus the folks who've already come out in that race saying that they're going to run against him? I mean, That would be fascinating.
That would be
That would be a
fascinating.
debate that I would have the world's most giant tub of popcorn to watch. But yeah, maybe because I feel like even though Rick Caruso didn't win that mayoral race, I don't feel like his political aspirations have been quenched.
I don't think so either. My sense from having watched many of those mayoral debates is he has an unquenchable thirst for public office.
Yes.
And at least while he still has the time, energy, and excitement to do so.
And the money. Despite all the money, he's run the mayor race. And despite the, $300,000 worth of stuff stolen at this smash and grab, that wasn't his store, even though it was his property.
Personally, I feel like he should just open a center at USC or something on housing.
There you go.
Right?
He
knows
not a bad
housing.
Idea.
Do that.
There you go.
You can fund academics or something.
Like Sarah.
Not me.
So, some other speculations that have been out there that I just want to talk about and have fun with for a moment is, we've talked so many times on this podcast, Sarah, about the race to replace Dianne Feinstein, which just churns on every day. Barbara Lee, Adam Schiff, Katie Porter, everyone's out there doing their interviews and their fundraisers. And I think Katie Porter was selling her favorite single mom recipes, trying to raise money. And look, that race is fascinating as it is. But what if there's been rumor and speculation that former Dodger, my childhood, I just couldn't even get it out because I had such a crush on him as a kid. Steve Garvey.
So much about you, Alex.
Steve Garvey and Greg Brady, man, posters on the wall, that he might be running. And then the really interesting one, I want to give a shout out to Carla Marinucci, a former reporter with Politico, who's been covering California politics forever and is so sharp. She had lunch with Willie Brown, former mayor of San Francisco, former speaker in the legislature, and apparently he has been talking to Arnold Schwarzenegger and was like, Arnold Schwarzenegger is very seriously considering running in this race as well. And can you imagine Schwarzenegger versus Schiff and Porter and Lee, and Garvey? I
don't know about that.
I just think it would be fascinating.
It would be totally
power, politically, sports-wise, and movie-wise on that one. It's like the trifecta.
Yeah, no, it really is. Well, and I think that's been the reigning wisdom, is that if a Republican were to actually try to win this Senate race in very blue California, they would have to have serious star power. And certainly Arnold Schwarzenegger fits that bill and has won before. I don't know. He's 76 years old.
Oh, my God. But Sarah, the fit is, first of all, still going to Gold's Gym, I think, every day in Venice Beach. And if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend. There is a great Netflix 3-part documentary series called Arnold. And just, if nothing else, if you like politics, watch that third and final episode. It is all about his political trajectory. I mean, I was there and covered it as a reporter, and I learned so much just from reliving it all again. But one of the things that they said in the end, I can't remember who said it, but someone close to him said, Arnold Schwarzenegger has no plans of dying. It's just not. I'll die someday. You'll die someday. We know it's our cards. No, he plans to live forever. And I think it would just be fascinating, especially as all these questions raised about Mitch McConnell's age and Dianne Feinstein's age and Biden's age and Trump's age, to have Arnold Schwarzenegger take that seat and keep it forever.
I think it would definitely disrupt the top two primary situation, right? Because thus far, we've really said, look, it's going to be two Democrats in the general.
Yeah.
If an Arnold Schwarzenegger jumps in, I think then he's going to play ball and make it to the general election. Can he win it? Maybe. Depends on who the other person is, who makes it with him.
Tough to say, as they say, bringing it back. That is it for us this week. You can follow us on all the different socials. I am there at Alex Cohen in LA.
And I'm at Sara Sadhwani.
And if you're listening to us now, please know that we are also available on YouTube. We are so excited about this. You don't have to subscribe to anything to see us there. So watch us, tell your friends about us, and we will be here next week. The Inside the Issues podcast is a Spectrum News One production. Hannah Kokish is our producer. Nathaniel Leathers is our editor. The executive in charge of production is Jeff Shore.